Welcome, or welcome back, to Underspire Gaming. Today I'll tell you about the vote for the next faction to be released, also known as Project 8. In case you weren't aware, for the past few weeks, the community has been voting for which faction would follow city-states. The first round of voting is over, but there's still 2 more rounds for you to let your voice be heard. The second round, which is currently ongoing until the 20th, involves leaks of the art and 3D sculpts for each of the factions, which I'll show later in this video. The final round, which runs from January 20th to January 27th, will include full faction write-ups and art for each of the 3 factions. The faction that will come next will be whichever one wins the most of these votes, with round 3 counting double. So factions that still haven't won, like Dogs of War or Sorcerer Kings, still have a chance to win it. In the case of a tie, Parabellum will choose between the 2 tied factions. You may be wondering how you can participate and vote, and I'll walk you through that process real quick. First, you're going to want to go to the Conquest website and click on the Living World link. Next, you're going to want to go to the top right corner of your screen and make sure you're logged in. If not, log into your account. Then if you scroll down and look at the map, you'll see 3 different icons representing the 3 different factions that are available. The black arrow pointing to the Forces of Hell, the gray arrow pointing to the Dogs of War, and the white arrow pointing to the Sorcerer Kings. Clicking on either of these will provide you with a short write-up and images for each faction, and all of them will allow you to vote. At the bottom of each of those tabs, you'll see this exact same screen. You'll be able to assign however many votes you have to a faction of your choice, and then when you click vote, it'll submit your votes. An important note: your votes will reset every Friday at roughly 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, so don't hoard your votes and make sure to spend them before your time's out. Now that you know how to vote, who do you want to vote for? I'll go through and break down each of the factions with brief summaries of their background, discussion of their playstyle, and interspersing the released concept art that we've seen so far. The first faction is Dogs of War. This faction represents a human kingdom that's smushed between the 100 Kingdoms and the rest, a Dweghom hold and the Spires. While they are very rich, none of the powers surrounding them wish for them to have a strong standing army, but they also have access to a rare mineral in the form of Cilibium. Because of this, they have exorbitant wealth, and their solution to this inability to have a large standing army was to recruit large mercenary forces from other factions. This faction will be represented by a core troop of Western European-themed humans, and then supported by standalone mercenary units hired out from other factions. Each of these units will be unique to the Dogs of War, but will share the art style of the faction they were drawn from. We've been told of things like Weavers, the Quiet, Mantis Warriors from the Spires, and even Crystal Knights. So if you want a glimpse at factions that aren't even announced yet, this is the faction to vote for. The Dogs of War will be comprised of Polmog Principality forces and then mixed mercenaries, so they won't have your standard sub-faction design. Instead, the army will be allowed to skew and focus in any direction it wishes, depending on which tools and mercenary units it chooses to bring. The next faction is Hell. The Nords have stories of Yggdrasil, where the gods lived, and the Einherjar were taken, when in reality, Yggdrasil was just a creation of the Spires and the Weavers. A creation so powerful it was able to ensnare dragons within its roots. But when Haslia came to destroy the biological supercomputer within Yggdrasil, he didn't quite succeed. Nidhogg is still trapped within the roots of Yggdrasil, and Hela, that biological supercomputer, still exists in a fashion. Together, the 2 of them seek revenge for the wrongs that have been done to them. Between Nidhogg's spawn, the last of the dwarves, and the biomantic manipulations of Nidhogg's DNA, Hell will bring a force of drakes, dragonkin, and draugr to bear against their enemies. As a faction, the draugr death cults will be the backbone of the army, while the dragonkin will be a high damage unit that suffers high attrition in return. Finally, Nidhogg's spawn will represent drakes from the size of horses to the size of towering monsters. The overarching playstyle of this faction will be to cause high attrition on both sides of the battlefield, and then using their elite units to mop up whatever is left standing. That brings us to the final faction, the Sorcerer Kings. When Haslia fell, he didn't fall by chance. He was brought down by human magi who'd bound themselves to the four elementals, earth, wind, air, and fire. As Haslia was falling, they saw the destruction of Capitas coming, and so they used those powers to raise a chain of islands out into the ocean, where they created a continent. From that continent, the four sorcerer kings created their elemental courts, and when Ninua helped guide human tribes to this new continent, the sorcerer kings destroyed the path and exiled the tribes from their cities. The sorcerer kings will be a blend of jinn and elementals, backed by powerful sorcerers. The faction will play as a highly mobile army with strong ranged and magic damage, but the wizards will need to be protected, or it will quickly lose its strength. Because of the strength and the rareness of the magical elementals, this army will be one of the most elite armies in the game. Now that you know what factions there are, go out and vote, and you can help decide which faction will come next. If you'd like more Conquest content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.